Hello, everyone. Welcome to the return of Book Corner, where we have a lovely chat about all things book related, where we digest and discuss the wonderful world of Doctor Who books. In this installment, we're taking a look at the Eccleston Ninth Doctor graphic novel, The Cruel Sea, one of the Panini published ones back in like 2014, 2015. But I'm joined by the Series 1 connoisseur and a comic book expert. It is, of course, James.
I wouldn't call myself either of those things, but that is
you have studied Series 1 for quite some time, and you know your comics, so that's why you're here.
Indeed. Yeah, this was I think this was published 2013, I think it says, so just in time for the 50th anniversary. Indeed.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So while we wait for a few more people to join, what have you been up to? What have you been keeping yourself busy with besides reading this lovely comic?
Lord. Well, we got a nice surprise when woke up. What was it, Tuesday or I think it was Wednesday, and then saw Big Finish put out a trailer for Out of Time 2. And I was like, that's interesting. Then I looked at my Big Finish app and there it is. It's like, well, because I think that when the 10th Doctor stuff was on sale, I got the bundle for the Out of Time stuff, so that takes me all the way to the Colin Baker audio. So not had a chance to listen to it yet. I'm kind of waiting for the right time. I feel Out of Time, it's such a special event. You know what I mean?
It's a monument in the Big Finish calendar. Last year, it feels like a blockbuster listen. It feels like a Marvel movie in terms of the Big Finish universe.
Absolutely. Because Out of Time 1, that's an action figure adventure from 2008 brought to life, isn't it?
Oh God,
and then with Out of Time 2, you get an expansion on Time Crash, which is cool. So it's still stuff that we grew up with in a way, or all from the same era. And obviously we all know how well Tennant and Davison work together. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, yeah, they've got a very special connection, haven't they? Those two, in more ways than one. So
Yeah,
and they mention it in the behind the scenes that they've got quite an interesting dynamic. That they got to know each other in a working environment, and here we are in another working environment, and it was a way of them communicating through lockdown, doing that. So it's really cool.
I love every Christmas Georgia Moffat posts them putting up like the Christmas tree or changing a light bulb. It's so domestic. It's really wonderful.
You kind of wish you just want to be in that room as well, because I just want to be a part of that, please.
Yeah,
that'd be very
cool.
Yeah. How about you? Out of Time. For me, I've been reorganizing the Big Finish collection.
Oh wow!
Because of the relaunch, I thought I kind of need to change it up to fit in with the new box sets. So I'll post some photos online once I finish that. That's been my little project, and finally completed the Companion Chronicles, which is nice. Had a little eBay splurge.
What was your final few to go?
The Great Space Elevator and the Evelyn Smythe one, I think, Town Called Fortune, which was like 50 quid or something on Amazon. I was like, I'm not paying that.
Wow.
So managed to find it for a tenner. So I was like, I'll happily pay a tenner for it.
That's good.
So that's kept me busy, really.
Yeah. In terms of other Doctor Who stuff, I've not really been doing anything. I think I've just been enjoying the weather more so, getting out a bit, which is nice. Tell you what, I did listen, of course, Third Doctor 7, which was brilliant. I think storytelling wise, I'm sure we'll probably cover it on a Big Finish fans eventually, so we won't go into too much detail. But in terms of storytelling, my favorite release of the year, absolutely. Like, I don't even though
both stories are equal for you, like Unzal and the Gulf War. Okay,
I think absolutely.
There's no favorite.
I think I think I did rate the Gulf like a 0.5 better, because I think it stuck the ending a lot better than I think Unzal Incursion did, because Unzal Incursion it was very loud, and actually it was a bit difficult to keep track with, wasn't it? But if you want value for a box set, that's just wow, it's just brilliant. It's brilliant to hear Liz Shaw on audio. Same with Sarah Jane. Sadie Miller's just perfect. And they both nailed the tone, and I think that's really what you need with the release of this. So what was your thoughts on season 7?
Oh well, I think it's one of those
volume
box. Yeah, volumes. I think it's one of those box sets what took everyone by surprise because it's entirely recast. And if you said to, well, I think this box set caused a lot of discourse, which is wrong because I think that it was a tremendous box set. The Unzal Incursion is probably my favorite of the two. Really? I just really, there was something about episode 2 of the Unzal Incursion what just spoke to my little 8-year-old heart because I've said before, like Inferno episode 3 with the whole sort of Pertwee driving Bessie while the sort of Benton and his guards are all chasing him and brigade leader sort of stuff. It sort of just made me go, wow, that's my bit of Pertwee. So I just absolutely loved that, and I think that's why that resonated to me. And the little tease of who might be involved behind it it's just great. Then the golf again, a love letter to the Third Doctor era of sort of the wacky zany people in this sort of isolated place with a real doomy rhythm atmosphere within it, with the sort of creeping seas and all that sort of stuff. And it sort of reminded me a little bit of The Cruel Sea in a way.
With
certain elements, which I guess we'll talk about a bit later. But I
think with the golf, I think one of the best parts of the Sea Devils is like when he's on the rig and the Sea Devil comes around. It's that famous photo that was on one of the books that was released. I think it was the first ever behind the scenes book they did.
Yeah, the making of Doctor Who.
Yeah, I think that's one of the strongest parts of the Sea Devil. So it's basically that for an entire 4-parter. But yeah, it does its own thing. Like, it takes lots of modern storytelling elements, and it's an all-female cast as well, besides Tim Trelaw, which I didn't realise until the behind the scenes. I think all the cast on both the audio just smashed it. Absolutely. Definitely very impressed with John Coleshaw as well in the Untitled Incursion. Very super believable as the brig. I think he adds a lot of dimension. He gets a few quiet moments, and it's nice to have the Doctor and the brig on their own. I liked the monsters and the villain, and I also really liked them in the Gulf. I thought it was very trippy and weird. They even do reference Omega's domain, don't they?
Yeah.
And so it's absolutely a love letter, and I'm super excited for Volume 8.
Yeah, it's definitely made me excited for the future of the Third Doctor stuff, because the golf was fantastic, and like they teased in the little newsletter thing that Sarah and the Third Doctor are going to have more adventure. And I think Sadie is really coming to her own. I think that she was absolutely stellar, and same with Daisy Ashford. I thought she was amazing as Liz Shaw, and I think the Unzal Incursion was a story dedicated for Liz, with the sort of Hawks sort of network thing. So I thought it was a good story for both companions, really.
Because being in between 7 and 8, it allows a bit of depth to Liz and why she would have left, and it kind of sets that up a little bit for maybe. They've already told it in a companion chronicle, but I have a feeling they might retell it. I'm not too sure, but we'll see.
We've always got the Scales of Injustice, which if they were doing the Virgin Missing Adventures, then I'm sure that would have been one they would have tackled.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think these like past few months for Big Finish, I think, and up till August and well into October and November, I think it's the most exciting Big Finish year since 2015.
Oh God, yeah, because we had the new series license in 2015, but this year it's like every fan's getting their wish list having a little tick. Eccleston, Tennant having his own big grand series, Dalek Universe, the War Doctor in a completely new capacity to John Hurt. It's really incredibly exciting. And then you've got Out of Time and the end of the main range. There's so much going on within this year, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface yet.
Because it's a 4-month stretch, 5-month stretch of new series Doctors, isn't it? From March until August, every single month,
which is crazy.
That's wild. Because is it next month that's like, or is it the month prior that's the first month for a classic Doctor? Big Finish.
I think it's August. I think, right? No, is it August? I feel like it's August.
Because there has or will be a month that there's no classic Doctors. It's just new series stuff.
Oh no, I don't think it is August actually. I'm trying to think. I would say it's June, but you've got the 5th Doctor. July's got the 3rd Doctor. I can't remember which month it is now, actually.
Yeah. But it's very much a next generation of Big Finish kind of evolve, and there's a lot more younger talent will come and involve. Of course, YouTube's Dominic G. Martin is half the upcoming Peloton set, and the 2nd Doctor Companion Chronicles, which is cool. And obviously, I think it's cool with next Eccleston set, obviously topical. It's just I'm fairly certain it's all right as you grew up with the era, so I think that's really cool. We've got a couple comments.
Let's do those quickly.
Of course, Luke has corrected us. Tell us go on to
July. There we go. Very sorry.
Hello, Harry. Bowtie.
Hello, Harry.
I remember doing Tom Baker Meets David Tennant and Fight Daleks with Dollies back in 2008. Also had Julian Bleachers, Davros, and a Deviant Dalek. Yeah, I think we absolutely all had those adventures.
As the classic figures came out, it was like, let's do these stories. You know? And I feel like the Out of Time cover too, Gate of Hell, it just seems like one of those quick reads books in a way, like the Somtaran games, Revenge of the Dragoons, I'm a Dalek. You know, it has that sort of feel to it. Like you can imagine it being like a little quick read. You'd see in W.H. Smith and you're pestering your parent going, oh, can I have that? It's only 99p. Go on.
Yeah. And obviously they're not going for like the peak of storytelling. They are very much introductory stories into Big Finish. But it serves its purpose because it's a bit like, it's like Dalek Universe 1. I don't think had like I thought the story was very good, but I think its vibes carried it, and especially for Ravagers as well. I'm sure we're going to talk more about vibes carrying a graphic novel. Very good nostalgia. I think it's very much the inverse of say 10th Doctor Adventures Volume 1, where it very much the idea of the nostalgia carried it, while now it very much kind of they do replicate the tone very well. I think more so for Tennant. I think they really exceeded and felt like a brand new series for Adventure. It felt like something like the storybooks or something. So yeah, only us. We talk about Big Finish on a podcast
on a book podcast.
Yeah.
But hey, it all works. It's all fine. You know. It's all grand. Should we move on to the graphic novel then? Because I think we've had our little Big Finish chat, I guess.
Right into it.
Let's get right into it. So this is quite an interesting graphic novel because we've got a collection of stories. So we've got The Love Invasion, Art Attack, The Cruel Sea, Mr. Nobody, A Groat's Worth of Wit, What I Did on My Summer Holiday by Sally Sparrow. Some very interesting little stories. What inspired later series 3 stories, so it's very much like Jubilee is to Dalek. That's the sort of element we're in. I'm a relatively new comic graphic novel person. In lockdown, I took advantage of quite a few Forbidden Planet sales and picked a few of the hardbacks up. So I'm coming from this from a perspective of, a Doctor Who story, isn't that wonderful? Whereas you're more of your diehard, you understand your panel layout and all that nitty gritty detail of what makes a good comic.
Summertime is definitely my time. Where I of course I'm always a Doctor Who fan, but because it's time off, I like to chill and have a read. And I like to read comics. That's when I kind of do need to have a break from Doctor Who sometimes. I think I did completely last summer. I just didn't indulge in anything for like 6 months. And I just kind of catch up with stuff I want to read. I'm currently reading, it's not got the slipcover on, but it's this chunky omnibus of the New Teen Titans, which I've not even made a dent in. It's from the 80s, so it's very, very wordy. And also reading the original Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman by George Perez, and Swamp Thing by Alan Moore, picking that up from last year. Plan to get on Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol, which I'm sure we'll cover Grant Morrison eventually in a future episode, hopefully, if we get around to doing World Shapers, if everyone enjoys this, I guess.
Yeah, it's on the cards.
Yeah, absolutely. And every... in here, everything's drawn by Mike Collins, I believe.
So it's got one big consistent style. So I think that's the thing with graphic novels. I think if the likenesses aren't there, I find it hard for myself to become immersed. Whereas, because this has such a consistent style, I found myself more engrossed, making it feel more like a series of adventures, having that one consistent style. Granted, the Cruel Sea sort of shakes that up, but that's because the story requires it. But other than that, I think that the artwork is absolutely stellar. I think that's where I'm going to kickstart. With that, really.
I think this is one of the peaks, I think, for Doctor Who magazine, because you just come off the absolute just roaring success of the 8th Doctor run, and of course the 7th Doctor prior to that. It was just extreme of utter quality. I think when they introduced Frobisher, it's like you just getting on banger after banger. I think they definitely continued that well into the 10th Doctor stuff. I've not picked up any of the 11th Doctor stuff, but I remember some of the later Capaldi stuff as well. That's brilliant, and the 13th Doctor stuff is great. So I think in terms of Doctor Who comics, Doctor Who magazine is my favorite. Like I love its style. It's very quick and punchy. Sometimes I do think they are a bit too short, due to its format, because they do average around
9 pages.
About nine pages, 9, 8, 10. Just a correction. Mr. Nobody, which is a one-shot single strip, is drawn by John Ross. So that's to give Mike Collins a bit of a break. And
so he did write one of the stories within this, Mike Collins.
He did Art Attack, and Clayton Hickman in the back of this talks about it's insane that he found the time to draw so many of these beautifully and write one as well. Like Mike Collins I think he's one of the best Doctor Who artists. I think he's wonderful. He's brilliant.
Definitely got Eccleston's mannerisms down in a panel.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
That's what I loved.
And I think just to say, because of a certain writer that appears twice, who we're not going to mention, we're going to use the platform instead to raise awareness for the Mermaids charity, which aids young trans people. So please look at the donation link in the chat. If you can spare anything, please do. Or simply
put it in the description as well, so it's there.
Or simply just use the link to inform yourself, really, if you're interested. So yes, I think a thing to say with the Cruel Sea before we get into the individual strips is the tone of it all, because I had to give up on Clockwise Man just for now, because the way I am with the reading is that if I've not done it for a while, I can't do it. So I'm breaking myself back in with comics, getting better, because I'll do maybe you start with an issue a day and then you do 2 more, and then I think at one point I read like 5 issues of Suicide Squad by John Ostrander, and that. So I'm getting back into the groove, and then I'll revisit Clockwise Man, I think maybe end of the month. But the tone of Clockwise Man, I cannot speak for the rest of them, of the strips. I know that they do get a little bit cheeky and fun with Eccleston's personality, I think later on. But while Clockwise Man definitely latches onto the macho element of the Doctor, because obviously it's very difficult to write for a Doctor who's not appeared on television yet. And I think that's something that the novels can absolutely legitimately Rose and the 9th Doctor, but they can do some things a bit uncharacteristically. So as I was saying, Clockwise Man really latched onto the macho element of the 9th Doctor. Like he shoulder tackles someone in the first chapter. And it's like the Eccleston only fights like 2 people, and one of them's an Auton in the entirety of Series 1. I'm fairly certain.
And you've got the Gelf. He does have a little tackle with a Gelf to get Rose back.
So it's very sometimes a writer may characterize Eccleston as, what's the word, like a ruffian, quite hard.
He's from the north, so you think, he's a hard nut, is Eccleston.
And obviously in this, they opt for, I think, a more light-hearted, cheeky side to him, which I think works so well, especially with the pulpy art style and the fantastic colours I think that are used throughout. And I think it aids both story, art, tone really well. And there's a bit where we get to go inside the Doctor's mind in Cruel Sea, and it's very all cartoony, and it absolutely works.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you still do have like macho moments, like the love invasion when he's on the moped, but then you do have the wonderful serious moments in like A Groat's Worth of Wit when he's sort of confronting the creatures for the first time in part 2, and they're gonna sort of cause havoc with time, and you get that sort of stern going, look, you don't want to do that. So I think there are some good moments where you do get that more broody Eccleston Doctor, but there is a lot of fun to be had with the 9th Doctor, and it's great. You can see that these are sort of late series one. You can see that he's healed. He's just with Rose for a good time, really.
Yes, absolutely. And this, this is a time capsule, isn't it? You've got 2 stories that would inspire future episodes, so the Shakespeare Code and especially Blink, because you've got Sally Sparrow in a very different way. And I can't wait to talk about that. It's at the end, but I think it's such a unique entity that's so much worth reading. It's very much like Blink, but it's not. And I think some parts work super well, especially with a Doctor swap and stuff like that, because I think it's like when you talk about Eccleston, if he stayed for series 2, you can't imagine it with Sarah Jane. It's just kind of 2 separate entities. Oh, it works for Tennant because he was the fan. So you're like, oh, Eccleston won't work with Sally Sparrow. It's like, he does. He really does. Because you get to see Dad Eccleston from Empty Child, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
So should we dive right into
should we dive in with the Love Invasion? So give you a quick overview of the story so you know where we're at with the story, so you don't feel lost if you're not familiar with the story. So we kickstart the Love Invasion in London 1966 in Carnaby Street, where we have these strange ladies going around called Lend a Hand, which are basically do-gooders, very much like Polly from Doctor Who, very your typical 60s girl, 60s fashion. So we see the Doctor and Rose just enjoying that. It's wonderful that Eccleston's costume, again, just evokes the time. It just shows how timeless that costume is. So we see them go back to the sort of Powell estate where they notice, hang on, there's already buildings there. When Rose's nan said, look, there was nothing there on that land. And then they noticed that the World Cup had changed with the score with England versus Germany. So we get the scene of the Doctor, going, oh, this isn't quite right. And they go off investigating as they meet another character who has got a history with Lend a Hand.
Indeed, because we see a mysterious woman put a mask filled with gas over on the Lend a Hand girls, and it just sucks the life out of them and just leaves them a vacant husk.
Where we see Rose go off to do her own little investigation while Eccleston's busy doing that. Rose meets up with, what's her girl name? Shirley Gilbert from up north. She's another Manchester girl from, I think, Oldham, or Levenshulme or something like that, where they encounter the mysterious force behind Lend a Hand. And then, of course, we have the good old dramatic cliffhanger for part 1 with the Lend a Hand girls. And we get them all sort of team up and face the Lend a Hand alien creature within it. And
so the end of part 1, he actually finds the woman who has been doing the who has been murdering these Lend a Hand people. And I believe her name is I actually can't remember this.
I'll have a look. So we do get a backstory in part 2. I'm just trying to find it.
Yes.
Where is it?
So her husband was working with was working on a project, and basically he was murdered, and she believes it was the Lend a Hand people who are behind it, because the aliens who are in control of all of this situation, they don't want to destroy the Earth, do they? It's more kill the Earth with kindness in a way,
to stop a war going on.
Twist. Yeah, so there's a war in the future with humanity, and this other species, and and one of them travels back in time in a time machine, and and he starts making these changes, and there's a brilliant ending to part 2 where it's the motivation, and Night Doctor's like, "Oh, so you want to destroy the Earth?" It's like, "No, I don't want to destroy the Earth. I want to destroy the moon." And it's like, what? There's an issue of Spider-Man called Spider Island, and there's this. It's a common meme, and it's this like dinosaur pterodactyl man, and Spider-Man's like, "Oh, this technology. All you do is spend people turning people into dinosaurs. You could cure cancer." And the pterodactyl man just replies with, "Oh, I don't want to cure cancer. I want to make people into dinosaurs." It's just such that logic. I want to destroy the moon.
But there's logic behind destroying the moon because it will stop Earth humans having space travel to stop the wall. So there is method to his madness.
Alien's a bit stupid, and it and it doesn't realize that if it destroys the moon, then the Earth will die basically, because the tides will go absolutely insane. And Rose is quite disgusted by this. I think Rose has some fantastic lines in this just to stay that because Russell really he promised Rose to be a Buffy-like action heroine. I don't think, this was a huge part of my dissertation. I don't think Rose fulfilled that role because her agency a lot of the time did exist for the Doctor. She wasn't the one. She would definitely have a part in driving stories, but she wouldn't be the sole cause of drama and action. So the Doctor tells Rose to go back and stay behind, and she's like, "No, I'm going to make my own investigation." That's why she goes to lend a hand and infiltrates the line very smartly to get inside and find information. Very brave as well, as they are confronted by this ghostly apparition of one of the aliens coming through. And there's also a statement she makes to the man at the front desk who's like this kind of pervy old guy. And Shirley is the one she meets in Lend a Hand, isn't it?
Shirley is.
And Shirley is definitely not as attractive as Rose. So he picks Rose over her, and she's like, "I'm not eye candy." So that's a statement to be like, I'm not one of the old Who girls who it was in the public mind of just being like,
for the dads.
Exactly. And it's a statement how much the show has evolved, especially with Doctor Who magazine as well, because it really expanded upon Ace. And of course, then you got Izzy, who is introduced in Endgame as this gun-toting freedom fighter in Stockbridge. And then, of course, you got Destry as well, who I think is the closest Doctor Who's ever become to that Buffy-like action heroine, I think. So it's definitely a changing of the times, where I don't know, you just get to see some agency with them. So the cliffhanger part 1 is the Doctor is gassed by, I think it is Charlotte.
Which is very Aliens of London-esque, isn't it? It just has that sort of feel to it, which I really like. It's just sort of very off the time.
And the Doctor, because of his biology, can take it.
Again, I'm going to say it's a little precursor to Unicorn on the Wasp.
That is true. Yeah, because his body can extract the cyanide.
Because you've got him having like a sandwich with loads of all manner of horrible stuff. What you wouldn't put in a sandwich.
Bread, chocolate, a bit like chicken.
Yeah, which is a bit like what Tennant did with, Salt and a shock and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
So it's very, I guess, a little precursor to Unicorn and the Wasp in that way as well.
Yes, exactly. And because of all this stuff's going on, so the Powell estate has this kind of these luxury homes being built on its grounds. I think there's a very cool bit of synergy to the Eighth Doctor stuff. The Ninth Doctor goes to a pub, which is, of course, where the Eighth Doctor goes for information in the Flood. A pub, and that's where the Cybermen appear. So I think that's quite cool. The Love Invasion as well. It is the only one of these strips to have come out while Eccleston is the current Doctor, because obviously
really
November is released monthly. I think it was maybe just before Parting of the Ways aired, and then obviously you've got the month as well for Art Attack. So Eccleston's gone by then, and I think
that's mental.
Yeah, and I think some of the writers were informed about that decision, because I think in one of the strips, and then we'll come to it, there's a little bit I think it's at the end actually, the very final one. Rose hugs him and is like, "Oh, you're not going anywhere," and he kind of smiles. It's like, "Oh, that's really lovely. That's really lovely."
Yeah.
So the Lend a Hand girls, invade the university, and the Doctor steals a horse and carriage, which
we get the wrong catchphrase.
We do. He jumps out the window and says, "Geronimo," holding Charlotte's hand. And she's like, "You're mental. You're insane." I don't know if you noticed it, but on the side of the horse carriage, it says, "Bramble Merchants, Trotter's Lane." I thought that was quite a fun little...
Oh, that's quite a nice little note. Isn't there a reference to Bad Wolf as well within this little strip?
Yes, it's in part 2. I think in the pub, when they're sat down in the background, it says Bad Wolf on a poster, which it is this panel here.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, yeah, I can see it.
In the background.
I've got you.
There's a few fourth wall breaks. I think Rose looks at the camera, and there's a bit of a reference to the Doctor and Rose's relationship. And it's
Batman and Robin, isn't it?
Yeah. You and the Doctor, a bit of an age gap, isn't there? Oh, we're not that sort of couple. Right, so more of a Batman and Robin setup. No, because we don't sleep together. And I just thought that was quite a funny line. And I also love how the alien design I wasn't a huge fan on. Here it is. But there he is, exclaiming his plan to destroy the moon, which I just think is brilliant. And I think the resolution of this is a little bit of a cop-out. So the alien explains about the war in the future and it travels back in time. And the Doctor basically Charlotte, in order to get the gas that kills the Lend a Hand people, because they're part alien, in a way. They're clones, sort of. They're bred artificially. And I will get onto that. It's just a little bit where the story overcomplicates itself a little bit. So Charlotte obviously has a specimen of one of the old Lend a Hand girls, and the Doctor uses that to reverse engineer a virus that gives the Lend a Hand artificial humans agency, basically. And instead of becoming mindless robots, they start asking, like, why are we doing this? What's the point of it all? I'm getting a headache. I'm hungry. And the Doctor, I think, uses a line that he's used Rose's DNA in order to do this. So they've all got a bit of Rose in them, which I think is quite funny. Yeah. Just kind of like the moaning 19-year-old, which is quite good. The alien monster has a bit of a King Kong moment where it climbs up the post office tower, and the Doctor says, "Rose, that is one unlucky building." And
we do have Ben and Polly in there as well.
Yeah, which is not very clear, but I think it's probably referenced maybe in the back of the book in one of the biographies. It's a very blink and you'll miss it moment. And the Doctor throws the virus at the biological ship, where the ship gets a bit of a Marvin the robot from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of personality, where it's like, oh, I don't really feel like destroying the moon. I want to go explore the universe. So obviously that's reacting to why Rose is the perfect companion to the Ninth Doctor, isn't it? Because she has the urge to travel. It's in her blood. Because of her dad having like all the mad ideas, and that she's also got that. So the ship just flies off the planet, and just
and to takes
the alien away.
And to correct the Powell estate problem, Eccleston, with a click of the old Snorrick, has rigged the old bulldozers and diggers to just smash up the housing, and then that's the Powell estate back on course.
Yeah. And that's where it ends. And I think it's got good vibes, the story. Yeah, I think its exposition is where it kind of falls apart a little, because the Lend a Hand stuff I thought was overcomplicated too much, because you've got it's revealed that a lot of the Lend a Hand people are clones, or artificially bred humans and stuff like that. Yet they have interviews and brainwash normal girls to add their numbers up to the Lend a Hand army, as they can act as goons and snuff whatever the alien wants it to, like rigging a World Cup match or whatever.
Yeah.
See, I just it's more of an excuse for Rose to get behind the scenes, because I think you could have cut the whole clone plot out and then basically just had the human virus give all the humans back their agency. Have the story be girls are going missing, but then I guess if Charlotte's going around murdering them, I think she's let off way too easily. It's more of a cop out to be like, oh well, I think the Doctor makes a line of, oh, they're not real people, they're just strands of DNA. They're puppets, basically. Which I'm guessing for when this is set, because Rose is in our outfit from Rose, End of the World, Start of Unquiet Dead, Start of Aliens in London. So I think it's probably set after Unquiet Dead. So the Doctor's maybe a bit jaded about, like, oh well, they've not got personality to just.
Well, it's like in the Unquiet Dead, how he's just willing to let dead bodies be used for the Gelf. You know, they're full of gas; they might as well be used.
Yeah,
whereas this
on what the writers were given in terms of reference material, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, because I feel like you can easily tell with like the novels that they get the first 3 scripts of a Doctor and they work off that, and you can definitely see that within this sort of strip with Eccleston's sort of more macho thing, like you say, because you've got the whole moped thing of him trying to remember how to ride a moped. It's like, oh yeah, still remember it.
I think it's a big grin on his face,
which is, you can just see sort of that being a bit like Rose when he's just sort of swanning off with like the anti-plastic going anti-plastic. You can just sort of see that big grin of Eccleston. So I love that sort of stuff within it.
Definitely. I think in terms of reference material, because writers are usually given certain episodes in order to base their stories off, and I think that's probably easy for the comic strips because they're shorter and they're quicker to produce than, say, a novel, which was probably based off early drafts and ideas going around. So I think that the writers of this were given the first 3 episodes of series 1 to watch, which is a bit like the 13th Doctor books, where Jodie acts very much like she does in, say, Rosa, especially in The Good Doctor as well. And even repeat jokes from those first 3 episodes as well, to probably confirm the tone. Maybe, I don't know whether it's writer's anxiety of, oh, is this not going to match what's on telly? Okay, I'll repeat a joke. Where Rose at one point references The Unquiet Dead and being like, oh, I hate not being anywhere without electricity. I'm always reaching for a light switch that isn't there.
Yeah, which matches Unquiet Dead, yeah. I mean, Harry's just mentioned that isn't there a Dave Gibbons reference on the scooter? Yeah, there's a little thing saying Gibbo on there, which is a nice little reference like that. That was a nice little touch. I've just noticed that now, actually. That's really cool.
Where is it? Remember this how to do? Oh, it's probably there somewhere. Yeah, it's probably there somewhere. It works it goes by at such a breakneck pace, this, doesn't it?
I think that's why I enjoyed it, because it was, bam, you were straight in the adventure. You had the great setup. Like, the opening scene for this, you can easily imagine the pre-title sequence for it. You know, the lender hand girl helping that old lady, and then next minute this mysterious figure gassing one of the lender hand girls. You can just really picture the dun dun dun, like you can see that, oh, we're going on quite a scary trip of a lifetime here. So I really liked sort of the breakneck pace, because I think, like you say, because I've been away from reading some sort of stuff, so this was a nice break, little fast-paced little adventure to get you back into the world of the Ninth Doctor and back into reading, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like what Rose does for Shirley. She kind of like, well, I'm not having the job unless she gets it. And of course, luckily, Shirley lasts until the end of the story. I really enjoyed the use of the Sonic. That's a thing that I think was a memo by Russell, where he really wants the Sonic to be used because, you know, sell the toy, you know. And I think he's probably proud of the Sonic design as well. You know, it made sense. I think the classic Sonic, as iconic as it is, it's difficult to kind of explain to a non-fan of like, okay, so you don't point it, you kind of hold it up sort of in the direction of the thing, but you need to have the bullet turn the right way and you can't have the magnet actually facing because that's the wrong way. And Russell just simplifies it to it's an LED, you just point it. You know, it's beautifully simplified. Yeah, it's a funny strip. There's some good jokes. I think Mike Collins' art's brilliant. There's a few just again fourth wall breaks. Part 3, I think maybe the weakest. I think. But I really like the ending of the Doctor and Rose walking off, which I think it is an in between after Unquiet Dead. Just because the outfit.
I would sort of say a bit like it's got a bit of an early Rose vibe because you've got the mention of A levels, with I got a D in my GCSE science, so that sort of stuff really. So you can tell that the source material was very early on Series 1. The Lender Hand Girls, I'm gonna say go out on a limb, and I feel like they're the Eccleston equivalent of the Vampire Girls from Vampires in Venice.
Oh yeah.
They sort of have that feel where you can imagine if there was like a Doctor Who proms in 2005 and this was a TV episode, you can imagine them sort of coming down the stairs with a lender hand, like flyers going, "Oh, we're here to happy to help," and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, even though the Eccleston had a zombie story, it's very much his modern zombie story. It's a brainwash story, really, I guess. And I think it's cool how they're kind of given a bit of life, and he's like, "Well, it's a new race of humans, the Roses," and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." The guy who was working at Lender Hand at the desk, I think it's implied he was brainwashed as well. The spell's kind of broken. Well, he was
Mr. Love.
Human. Yes, he was kind of the face of, "Oh, well, you're the boss of the company, right? Because it's this big green monster." And I believe the crisis, can never be stopped in Earth's future history, where it and this alien race decimate each other. But yeah, I think it's wrapped up fairly well. They don't really explain the World Cup, but I'm guessing we've now formed a new timeline. I'm guessing, and the powerless Saint is its destiny is saved, really. But yeah,
should we do a little rating for it?
Yeah, what would you give it?
I mean, I kind of feel like I've been a little bit too generous, but I just had a lot of fun with it. I think I'm going to be a bit brave and say probably 8 out of 10. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good solid one.
Yeah.
Good solid start.
I'm probably going to go a bit lower. I think maybe a 7 out of 10 for me.
Okay.
Because I think tone-wise, I think the vibes of this is like Ravagers. And I think that's like that for a few other things where it's like, okay, storytelling's completely not on point. It's not completely accurate. But I think what this has the advantage of Ravagers is that it's got Rose to balance out the Doctor's actions, because you shouldn't have the Doctor doing everything and being the action hero, the concerning one, the stubborn one. It's like the Doctor should be the stubborn one with the kindness brought out by Rose, and Rose is the one who humanizes him. We see that later in Mr. Nobody, which is a great moment.
Well, the Ninth Doctor's never a person who saves the day. He never saves the day in any story, really, is it? It's always either Rose or another supporting character, so it's very fitting.
And it's really not until his chance in The Empty Child, really. Even though Butch couldn't have been done without Nancy either, so it's completely all on the people who you met. Which there is trickles of the Ninth Doctor's arc that gets prominent a little bit later on, where I think it's mentioned that his planet is gone in the next strip, which is Art Attack, which, Eccleston's gone at this point in Doctor Who magazine. Something I wish with the Panini stuff, I think sometimes parts and different strips bleed into each other. I'd really love if between strips they had the magazine cover, just to split it up, so you're not going from one panel to another, which I understand why they do it, so it reads as one complete
story.
As one complete story. But I think maybe in between, maybe have a collage of the covers that this appeared in.
I mean, Titan do it, so I wonder why Panini just don't do it.
I think it's maybe just to make, when you're having a flick through, just to make it seem a bit more meaty than it is.
Because this is a very quick graphic novel, because I think it's 112 pages, so you can easily fly through this in a day or 2 days. Really, I
think I finished it in about 3 separate days, just 3 sittings. Really, I think I sat here and read. I read Love Invasion 2 all the way through Cruel Sea in one day, and it didn't take long at all. It just flows really well. Is there anything else you want to talk about Love Invasion?
It's just I love the logo for the Love Invasion, how it sort of mimics sort of the Italian Job and that sort of thing. I like how it sort of used the 60s iconography very well within it for time setting.
And of course, Rose wants to go shopping.
To go on Carnaby Street. Which he does. So yeah, it's a good little strip, a good little introduction to the Ninth Doctor's world in comic form, really.
Indeed.
So Art Attack, shall we move on to that?
Yeah.
So the Ninth Doctor and Rose go to a lovely grand opening of the Oriole, a trans-dimensional gallery in the 37th century. And Rose, thinking, oh, I want to see the Mona Lisa, thinks she'll be going to the Louvre, but she's in quite a different art gallery, as it's sort of very Castrovalva-esque, isn't it? Sort of with that sort of layout of the museum.
It's like those paintings that are impossible. It's like the stairs that go in different directions and upside down. It's very trippy, and you got like a little pre-title sequence as well with the guy going into. It's like I think he's like one of the janitors. He's going down into the depths, and he's got taken by something, which is a bit creepy.
Which reminds me very much of the Ice Warrior from Cold War, Skaudak.
Really?
When sort of he's out of his armor and his sort of arms come from the ceiling from the submarine, and you've got the Russian sort of navy person there, and like the hands are there. I could really picture that imagery from that.
It's cool having a pre-title sequence as well, because that was something Series 1 really focused on, pre-title sequences. Because I'm fairly certain, is it every story besides Rose, and that doesn't have a previously trailer, always has a pre-title sequence. Fairly certain. It's like Boomtown. It's him talking about the nuclear power plant and Blomfield Fox being like, oh, it's fine, and then Celine, blah. So it just makes it feel of the era. You get to the shot of the monster reveal, and that's like dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
And Mike Collins has got a brilliant drawing of Billy Piper here in this pre-title.
I think it's probably like the best drawing of Billy, because I feel like Rose is a little bit sketchy in places where I think, this is probably the most detailed sketch of Rose within this collection of stories.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Wait, this isn't drawn by Mike Collins. Yeah, it is by Mike Collins, and he wrote it as well. Yeah. So Mike Collins as well. Also in the gallery, there is a meep of Beep.
On the top corner. And you've got an Alpha Centauri person as well, which is very cool.
Of course. So the Doctor goes forward and through like all of these weird futuristic art. There's, I believe, taxidermied dogs that are playing cards, and it's like, oh, that's a bit messed up. It's a lot like how in the future, in part of the ways they have like all of the horrific games for entertainment. So it's a bit of a carry on from that. I think Harry's just said, I remember thinking that between the alien in Love Invasion and the artist in Art Attack, whether they were riffing heavily on the Celine, all of them being Queen, as Terrence Dicks would say.
Big hands. Big old hands.
And they meet this very extravagant alien called Kazkelf, who was an artist. And they've got an exhibition going on. That's like the art piece. That Rose wanders off, goes and listens. It's like these headphones when you go to an art gallery, where they feed in kind of the history of the art. Doctor's like, no, I don't need one, but it kind of brainwashes anyone wearing them. A bit like the
like the cyber. Yeah, I was just going to say.
And they all go, and the device activates that. Kazkelf, activates it, and it starts drawing like their psychic energy, doesn't it? And sends out a signal
called the cry, isn't it? So it's live art to signal.
If
there are any survivors of Kazkar's species.
Because I think it explains that I think they were an adventurer and they crashed here during the worst period of Earth's history, just recovering from a massive war. Now, I have a little bit of a theory about that, right? I think this planet Earth is set after the Partner of the Ways. And that's a little reference to the Doctor, because he leaves before things before he has to tidy stuff up, and that's what ruins the Earth for 100 years. And of course, then the Daleks invade and destroy it so heavily that entire continents are reshaped. That's a statement right there. So I think that's the Doctor having a little contact with that history after, if that kind of makes sense.
Which he has no idea for.
Yeah.
Which is great. And then flashback, they return to the art gallery where Keskar has a new lease of life with art.
Yeah, because they offer to take him home, don't they? And they find that the planet's been destroyed. Whether by a war or by themselves, it says war natural disaster, can't tell, but they've been gone for a long time, which I think begs the question of how long Kaskelfa's lived for. And maybe
I guess it alludes to the Time War.
Yes, because series one, series one focuses on the leftovers of the universe,
the survivors,
the Gelth are affected by the Time War. It's very obvious that the Slitheen maybe would have been, intervened by the Time Lords possibly at one point for destroying all these planets, depending on how concerned the CIA is about it all. And obviously now they can just turn whatever planet they want into sludge. So yeah, I think it's implied that Kaskel's planet's been destroyed by the Time War, which then I think is one of the first references to the Ninth Doctor's planet being destroyed and it being a survivor. Which I think, saying this, I think it makes the story sound a lot more engaging than it is. Yeah. Mike Collins, brilliant artist, and I think he really nails the dialogue, but I don't, because this is a single one shot. It's this was done in one issue of Doctor Who magazine and that's it. And I just don't think it nails what it's trying to do. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think thematically it's got all the hallmarks of that's a series one episode. Because it reminds me very much of End of the World. You got these quirky alien designs. You could see that the reference material was End of the World. Let's just show all the wonderful aliens Doctor Who can do. And obviously this being a comic, there's no budget to that. So we can really explore these crazy alien designs. But like you say, I think that there's just something about the story what I didn't really gel. I didn't really care for Kazkarf.
Yeah.
I thought, you're a flamboyant alien. Yeah, I don't really vibe with you at all. So I couldn't connect with that character, Yeah. If I had no feeling.
I think they're drawn from Eccleston's kind of love for life and other alien life. So it's an Into the World. And he's looking at all the fantastic aliens coming through, and he's just having the time of his life. Look at them, they're brilliant. They're trees. Look at them, brilliant. So I think it's drawn from that, and just maybe it just shows that he's not judgmental, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just Kaskelf. Yeah, it was a bit rushed, I think, which I just can't. It can't be helped, can it?
And I'll be honest, I don't think you could extend it to be further. I feel like it has to be a one story comic. I don't think you could stretch it out anymore.
And really. I think maybe they are let off a little bit too easy. I think because after all, it's implied that they killed someone very early on, and I think it's a bit like the character in Love Invasion. It's they're not given the they still murder people.
Reprimand,
and the Doctor's kind of it's fine. But yeah, no. I think I'll probably give it a 4 out of 10. It was fine.
I think I'll give it a 5. I think that it's okay.
Yeah.
You enjoy it I enjoyed the start, I will say that, but as soon as Kaskarf becomes more of a prominent feature, I start to sort of lose my focus within it.
Yeah.
Got to be Art Attack.
So yeah, Cruel Sea.
The forgotten Rob Shearman story.
Yeah, it's not spoken about, is it? Because
people talk about the Big Finish stories, Jubilee, Scherzo, Dalek. Everyone's talking about the Dalek target novelization. They sort of forget about this is very much a forgotten Ninth Doctor story by Rob Shearman. And it's very interesting looking at this comic and comparing it to his work with Dalek, because he just finished writing Dalek, and I think Rob Shearman says in the behind the scenes stuff that he very much had Russell's voice in his head when he was writing it, and you can definitely see that on the page and the way the comic's structured and the design of it. So should we talk about the story of it?
Yes. So I guess first of all, it's a gem to have another new series story by Robert Shearman. Insanity. Never did another one. Insanity. Harry said it was the first Ninth Doctor strip he read, except I started from part 3 where it begins with Rose's alternate life. I was very confused, and that's a brilliant one. It goes very, I wouldn't say as surreal as Scherzo, but it's definitely along the same lines of Shearman madness. I love the first page of this, and this is one of my favorite pages in any Doctor Who comic,
bold statement there,
because there's no dialogue and the story is conveyed perfectly, and it's a deck of a ship at night, and there's a lone bride, there's a noticeable lack of people, and she goes over to the banister and she's contemplating her life. She takes off her engagement ring and she throws it in the water. I was like, oh, what's going on here? And the water splashes, and usually with a splash of water it goes plop up and then down, but no, the splash grows and it grows and it grows into a red hand, and then obviously implies that she has been taken. The evening after, the Doctor and Rose are there, and Rose is in a very Moonbase inspired get up, because it's more of her talking about you never end up where you say you're gonna go. It's like, when I want rocks, I expect rocks, and when I don't want rocks, I get rocks. And that's why I'll just enjoy it. I like her outfit, actually. It's like this space catsuit, I guess.
Yeah, I can see that.
And she's got the Moonbase kind of helmet on her.
Yeah, goldfish bowls.
It's revealed that they're on Mars in the future, where it's being colonized by Earth and
converted into like a luxury tourism lake. Isn't like the water cranberry juice or something like that?
That's a very Shearman thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the sea's red, and it looks like it's not naturally that. They've just done it just to ramp up the tourism.
Both tourism, yeah. The red planet becomes...
Which is an interesting deal, I guess. And so this is an important thing in the strip. So obviously there's no air on Mars. They've not affected the atmosphere, but they have terraformed it in an aesthetic way. So around the ship is an air bubble that travels along with the ship.
You can control the breeze, because Eccleston's like, oh, mild breeze tar.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. So you can make it seem more authentic if you are on a boat.
And a lot of this it's very, I think, kind of from a working class perspective, because it's a commentary on just how the rich will destroy all naturalism in order to benefit their own needs. And I think there's a brilliant story about life in here, because the villain of this piece is a decrepit old man who is like 140.
I was just going to say, it's a bit Lazarus in a way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Lazarus Experiment, maybe. I don't know.
And he marries. He has like all these wives, like 15 of them. Or I think
their numbers aren't there. They're not referred to by name. Their numbers.
Once they marry him, that's it. Their identity's gone. They're just a wife number, and the Doctor's like, he's kidnapped by one of the wives, kind of the main one who rounds up all the people. I think it's once their love is over and the old businessman is done with whatever life force they have, that she became his kind of like secretary, I guess.
His financial advisor, isn't it, or something like that?
Yeah. And the Doctor's like, he have a bit of dignity. There's no life here. It's simply just existing for the sake of it, which goes a bit back to the message of Eccleston in Into the World of everything has a day and everything dies, and the whole strip is all about kind of decay and, I guess, accepting the inevitability of life, really. Is there anything else you want to talk about this first issue?
I mean, they wear face masks, so wear your mask, guys. I think it definitely has that sort of Rob Shearman wackiness, especially with sort of the sink and the hand climbing out of it. I think that it's got some great little classic horror tropes with like the drip of water, and then it becomes sort of the hand.
So it's implied that the ocean's alive, isn't it? And it can take the form of people, and that's the whole thing. It creates kind of like it will inhabit their body, and then when that body's used up, they'll basically boom into cranberry juice, and that happens with the bride that we see at the beginning of the story. She comes back as a zombie, basically.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a bit Pirate Planet-esque in the sense that you've got like a husk of the queen in the Pirate Planet, where you've got the husk of the man. They're just being kept alive, really. Instead of being fed off planets, he's fed off his wives, really.
Yeah. And you see Rose's agency and how she, Rose has quite a few women supporting women moments in series 1. She has a quiet moment with Nancy, and of course with Gwyneth as well. And she really wants to help the bride, who I believe her name was Samantha, which that will come to pass, won't it?
Yeah, pretty soon, because she just becomes cranberry juice again pretty quickly as well.
She tries to jump over the edge before she turns into cranberry juice, but Rose drags her down, and then it's the inevitability, that's it. The life form is used up, and the doctor is thrown overboard because he refuses to help the husband. And you see the sea grabbing him, and it's like, oh no, is he going to become a cranberry juice monster?
And then we have the wonderful sort of start of part 2 where we see him in the cranberry juice, sort of trying to work it all out, wondering why he can talk. Is anybody going to hear him? Where he sees another doctor.
Yeah, and this is where the surreal elements of the story really, I think, come into play. There's a brilliant use of red and red backgrounds, and so it's the longer the consciousness is in there, the more hold over the being that the water can have.
The more corporeal it becomes, isn't it, really?
And there's a brilliant just use of that colour, because when Eccleston first goes in there, there's a lot of detail in that water. You can see all the air bubbles, the ripples. Yet as the story gets further on, and as the water gets stronger, the backgrounds simply just become a blood red.
See, it's sort of used as well for like the transition of each story, isn't it? The Red Sea.
Yes, well, that's really well done. Very, very well done there. So the doctor's alive, and Rose is taken hostage by one of the wives, who
wife 14.
Wife 14, yes, and her name's Vicky. And the cranberry juice kind of fights back against her, and it knocks her gun overboard. But she needs to take Rose in, otherwise she is going to get in trouble and thrown overboard as well. And of course, Rose is very cheeky to the head wife, and the doctor.
A bit like Cassandra, isn't it? Really,
definitely. It's a lot like that, and it strips away the humanity, doesn't it?
Definitely. And then you get the whole speech about that. You pathetic people, you've taken a planet beautiful and unique and made it into a toy. So you get that sort of rich Ninth Doctor character moment within the story, but then that soon shift within it when you get a very undoctor-like moment where he's like, well, go on, kiss the casket where the husband is, where the wife dissolves back into cranberry juice.
And this is where we get a very interesting presentation of the Ninth Doctor, because Eccleston always speaks about, I really chose the role of the Doctor because I always play the bad guy. I never got a chance to be the hero, and here we get to actually see the Ninth Doctor. Well, it's not him, it's the consciousness of the water, because the water's alive, like in Waters of Mars. And that uses the Doctor's body. It displaces everything. So the water's consciousness will go into the body, and then the body consciousness will be in the water, so it kind of swaps places, and these bodies only last for a day. But it's implied that through the Doctor they can last longer because of his lifespan regeneration and all of that. So yeah, Vicky has now become one with the sea, which is like, oh no, because she was the sympathetic one. She was our guide into this kind of wacky world. And just in a few issues that's taken away, and then you just see this image of Eccleston, just like this manic smile, and then the panel zooms in to see that the Ninth Doctor's trapped in the eye, a bit like the Tesselector effect.
Yeah, where we see the husband return to full, life, as he rises from his little casket.
In a very unquiet, dead way, in a way, when the zombie at the start, it's her grandson.
It's even got the same sort of design, isn't it? With like the strangle vent up there, right? Yeah, definitely can see that being the rising thing, and the way Eccleston's drawn, how he's all cast in shadow now, with sort of the white glowing eyes as well. It's wonderfully creepy.
So there's a thing of the story of it's more through implication that if you touch a drop of this water, then the water can then take a hold of you, which then it ends with the introduction into surrealness, with Rose looking into mirror, and Grin just gets bigger. This Grin forms, it just gets bigger and bigger, and then turns into a giant monster that says "Open wide," and it looks completely ridiculous out of context, but in context it actually really works, because it leads into the next issue where it delves into Rose's psyche, and what if she stayed behind
instead of lived her life of chips and beans.
Yeah.
We see her become married, have a family, and be a single mom, and yearning of what could have been. And we have the Ninth Doctor keep visiting her, going, do you want to come with me? You have a baby. Where we have one of the most horrifying moments within the story, where the Ninth Doctor takes Rose's baby, which is really quite horrible.
Because he's like, Rose, come with me, but leave the kid behind. What's one more kid on this planet of apes? And then he takes the baby, and then she just seems to never see the baby again. That's just horrible. Like, we see Rose throughout her life, we see a middle age, and then as an old woman. I think it's interesting the way that there's a specific couple dialogue boxes about Rose and Mickey breaking up. That's Russell's whole thing. If they were never compatible, they break up in Boomtown. They both have sides to them that is incompatible with the other. Mickey keeps secrets. He says in Aliens of London, no, I never saw anyone. But of course, he was seeing Trisha Delaney in Boomtown, and that's when that comes out. It's like, oh, so you lied then. Well, that builds upon kind of Rose's lies and her leaving him behind. And it realized that the two are just two incompatible beings. Rose is then taken into the water in her personality, where the Ninth Doctor comes back as she's working in the shop, and she's like, you took my child. And it's like, oh, what, companion 57? Give them numbers. I'm pretty sure I left them on some planet, or they joined a rebel group or something like that. He doesn't care. And the baby's name is, of course, Susanna, which then I believe is revealed to be the bride's name that we see at the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
And that's kind of her personality bleeding through. And like, when you're in the water, your consciousness can kind of become one in a way.
I just want to mention there is a horrifying moment where the husband encounters his first wife, the financial advisor character, where he needs feeding, and she just crawls into his mouth as his mouth sort of drops to the floor in a very cartoonish fashion. But it's utterly horrible how they draw him, because he's very repulsive with these big spots, and it's like he's got a plague or some sort of kind. And it's just really horrible how that is done throughout the comic, how it sort of shifts with his mouth just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, from a sort of a maniacal grin to it, the mouth just slowly becoming more and more deformed as she climbs into his mouth.
Yeah.
Utterly horrible stuff.
And it's the obedience as well. It's kind of the horrific part because she still believes she loves him, and then at the end she realizes, I don't. I was basically his carer of someone who never loved me. The way that the mouth just droops to the floor is just horrific, and of course that's her being absorbed into the collective consciousness of the water. And then you see the shattered face, which is on the cover, which is because when the water tries to take over Rose, she breaks the mirror, and then that's the water taking a new form, and that's it. Oh, so that's the reflection. So this is what humans look like in a way. Which that face isn't used as much as I thought it would be. I thought that would be the crux of everything, but no, it's only really just for a few panels, and then
3 panels, isn't it? Really.
And then when Rose uses the Sonic at the end of part 3 as well.
Okay, I see. It sort of reminds me. I guess this part does remind me of Forest of the Dead, with Donna having that other life, as it were. And I guess the sort of face on the cover reminds me very much of Miss Evangelista, where that sort of that jump scare of the veil being lifted and her face is all twisted from being uploaded into the library. So I can see that Moffat probably read this and I'm going to use this for a later date.
And then we see Rose as an old woman, and the doctor's last chance, get in the box, you're going to die soon. And she says, go to hell, and throws her Zimmer frame at the TARDIS, which then smashes the reality. And then she joins the Doctor in the water consciousness, as it's revealed that the water's basically taken over every being on the ship. The husband isn't back to life. That's the water taking over his body. And because they've absorbed the Doctor's consciousness, they know about the TARDIS. That's an infinite amount of people that the water can live forever in, because obviously they can only live for a day.
Family of blood, in a way. Yeah.
And Rose finds her way back to her body, and the Doctor it's quite trippy. The Doctor gives Rose the Sonic kind of in the consciousness realm, and then it kind of transports over to real life as she breaks through the water that's taken over her, and then she uses the vibrational settings to basically disrupt the water and just knock it back. And then we get a lot of explanation about the backstory that we've already mentioned about the water and what they want to do, why they want the TARDIS. And it tells Rose to look through her eyes, and then we get some very creative comic paneling as the Doctor then debates with
another Ninth Doctor.
Yeah. Do you want to lead through this bit?
Yeah, sure. So we have a whole sort of discussion about, the more you eat, the more you're going to burst, and that's sort of demonstrated through this very cartoonish squirrel, head being blown off, which I think's utterly wonderful, really. And then we get the history of the husband and his wives, and how the more absorption, the more decay and all that sort of stuff, and how it just progressed and progressed, and one of the wives becomes a cat, as we see sort of Rose fall through the time stream of the husband character, where we see Suzanne come back, now practically a husk. Where this is their chance to escape the realm of the water. Again, we continue the surrealist way with sort of the way out sign in the actual sea of itself, and that we continue the Doctor's contemplation about the TARDIS, about going back to the TARDIS and all that sort of stuff.
And the wives kind of all rebel against the husband, don't they?
Yeah.
And it's implied that Susanna, because that's her name, it's like her will's broken by him, and it's like she was the youngest bride, and look at us, look at us, we're all old now, and it's like I thought I thought I loved you, it's now that I deny you and I walk away, and then that basically kills the husband's soul in a way. And that's him dealt with, which, it's a very powerful ending in imagery, isn't it? As the Water Ninth Doctor, if you want to lead this, gets into the TARDIS.
And this is where it becomes so oddly. I mean, I'm just going to show because it is quite an oddly drawn thing, as you can see, where we see the Ninth Doctor eat the Ninth Doctor. To sort of break free of the water conscious, and we do have that sort of glorious moment of the water conscious thinking he's got control of the TARDIS, saying this is where the feast begins. But the only feast, what really happens is, the actual Ninth Doctor destroying the water consciousness of the Doctor.
There's a bit of a boomtown moment, isn't there? The dialogue, it's like this: the Ninth Doctor is like, "I tricked you. I let you get in here, because this TARDIS isn't just a machine; it's alive and it's a part of me. Now you're inside another being, and that allows the Ninth Doctor to become the dominant personality in that body."
Well, we see the Doctor materialize back on the ship with a good old mild breeze. The chains have shattered and all the consciousness returns back to the ocean.
Yeah. And it seems that the wives will just go on as people and
enjoying the cruise.
Yeah. And it's implied that the water will never sleep. It may take over different host bodies, but maybe it's just a thing of humans shouldn't tamper with what they don't understand, which I think is a great message. I think I love this strip. I think it's so rereadable because it's got so many layers. There's the subservience of the wives taking over and fighting and rebelling against the husk of the old businessman. There's the personality deep dive into the Ninth Doctor and really how Rose has helped him heal to be able to kind of talk and debate rather than lashing out about kind of entropy and death and acceptance about that, because I'm guessing it's most likely a post-Dalek story where he's accepted he is the last of the Time Lords. Mike Collins has different styles of art all the way through. When he draws the old businessman in a very hyper-realistic way, when we get to the kind of surreal bits, you've got the sort of, again, the cartoony style, and then the kind of more artistic graphic novel style that you'd find in kind of like a modern art kind of graphic novel that's quite surreal and very simplistic art, and that really works. And the use of colours as well is fabulous. But yeah, that's the cool thing.
I love how Mike Collins did inside the TARDIS console, but it wasn't brightly lit. It still had that sort of grungy look to it.
Yes,
but it was sort of like a very grungy gold color with like a slight luminescence from the green. I really liked how he dealt with the TARDIS inside the TARDIS.
Because it's really one of the only times that we see the TARDIS throughout this, besides I think the very, very ending of this book, the Shakespeare story. But yeah, definitely that green. Yeah, I think it just works. It's a beautiful console room, especially when it's lit like it is in Series 1. That's just where it shines.
Yeah, it doesn't look cheap at all in that, really.
I think part 2 was my favourite one because that's really the deep dive into Rose's life. That's her issue, and any deconstruction of a character like that's just going to be excellent. And I think Robert Shearman knocks that out the park.
I think it's a comic what wants to make you feel uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable a couple of times reading it, especially when you have the subservience of the wife going into the husband's mouth, to the horrible nature of Rose's life, and the Ninth Doctor sort of taunting her, going, "Come on, then." So I feel like there are moments where you go, "This is really horrible."
Yeah.
But I think that this is Rob Shearman let loose. He's like, I've got a comic now, so I can really do these zany things like hands coming through taps. I think that this really plays with Rob Shearman's sort of wacky, dark comedy humor throughout this strip. Really, what you don't really get, I guess, the Dalek Target novelization plays with that humor a bit more, but I feel like this is very surrealist, dark humor within it.
Yeah, definitely. What would you rate it?
You know what? I think I've got to give it an 8.5.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think 8.5 is solid. I think it's one of the best works of Doctor Who magazine, and it just has absolute just stunning reread value. And yeah, I think it's definitely worth picking up this whole graphic novel just for the Cruel Sea, which it is only 28 pages of value, but it's worth it, I think.
In terms of like the rich thematics of the characters within it and the themes it deals with, I think that it conveys it so well within those 28 pages.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the shot of the Doctor and Rose holding hands and basically, just confirming their trust in each other. And it shows that they're one complete entity together, aren't they?
Well, there's a moment within the story going, "How do you know it wasn't going to kill you?" It's like, I didn't, but I trust you, and that's why I let you do it.
Yeah,
which I think was a great little moment for that dynamic.
Absolutely. But yeah, Cruel Sea. You ready to go on to Mr. Nobody?
Yeah, This was a real treat. This one, yes. I think this one took me by surprise because when I was skimming through it for the first time, I was like, "Oh, this one's going to be a bit of a slog." We've gone through the main meat of the graphic novel, The Cruel Sea, and then we go to Mr. Nobody, which I have to say is probably the dark horse of the comic. I would say, personally, absolutely. For me.
Because you kind of look at the first page and it's this guy working in a chicken shop getting berated by his boss. He's cleaning up after
before
hours.
Nando's. Cheeky chicken. So yeah, got cheeky chicken.
Yeah. And he's basically like, right, if you leave that mop unclean, that's company property. And it's going to be on your salary. You're going to be out of here. And you're like, oh, okay, I kind of see where this is going. It's just going to be a kind of generic story about, a workplace environment. But no, I think it's a deep. I wouldn't say it's a deep, but it's a surprising exploration to grab life by the horns and wish for more, and which then relates to Rose and her.
See, I feel like it's a bit Douglas Adams the way it's sort of structured. It's like meet Philip Tyson, no relation, 26, no girlfriend, lives with his mom. Yeah. It just feels very Douglas Adams,
Yeah, absolutely. It's got a very pulpy attitude, doesn't it?
The way it introduces stuff definitely has that pulp feel.
And the story's by Scott Gray and with art by John Ross. And yeah, we see Phil Tyson. He's like, not life's never full of surprises so far, as he gets teleported away with his bucket, leaving them up behind, onto an alien hive ship where they believe that he is the reincarnation of what we know at this time, a horrific criminal.
A war criminal.
It's like
Shagulaf or something like that.
Yeah, it's a difficult kind of silly name. Shagulaf, the greatest criminal in our history, the monster who destroyed the mighty Vandos Imperium, and then the Doctor shows up to be his kind of lawyer in a way.
Yeah.
In this execution without trial.
It's the only story in this graphic novel where the Ninth Doctor says "fantastic."
Yeah. Because
that's the only one where he says it. So it feels very gratitude when you finally get it.
Because when you watch Series 1, he doesn't actually say it that much. It's kind of more the memory of it. And of course, it was always meant to be his catchphrase. But I guess it's the element of the 11th Doctor said Geronimo a lot, and the 10th Doctor with Alon Z towards the end. And I think fantastic society, the catchphrase, isn't it? It works super well. And then we get some great agency by Rose, because while the Doctor's doing this to stall them, while Rose is setting the ship to...
I love that. I love that little interaction of like, oh, I guess that's a fat in the fire now. And he's like, yeah, I heard you the first time. I loved that, because you can easily picture that between those two. I thought it was great.
Yeah, because she's like, hang on, I'm getting it done. And then bam. And then the alien species sends like these horrific like beasts that crawl on all fours, and then you have like suckers on them like Zygons, and then they run, and the Doctor's like, Phil, you're slow as behind, drop the bucket, and he's like, no, I can't do it. And we get a brilliant bit of agency by Rose, and she's like, shut up, you, like, we're used to this, but he's not. That bucket is the only bit of the real world he has left. He was just going about his normal life, and he didn't ask for this. And she goes over and takes the time to be like, hi, Phil, my name's Rose. And sort of relate to him in a way, which shows why you need the Ninth Doctor with Rose, because the Ninth Doctor, as wonderfully as he is that jaded character,
he's detached from everyday life, isn't he? He doesn't understand normality in the sense that Rose does.
Yeah,
and I think Rose provides that for Phil within this.
Absolutely, and it's the perfect synergy, isn't it? Yeah, I just think that works wonderfully.
But Phil does get his moment to save the day as he uses that company bucket.
Yeah, so it's the cleaning ammonia, isn't it, that the aliens are kind of allergic to, and the ship kind of blows up, which was a bit uncharacteristic, I think, for this version of the Ninth Doctor.
Which is a bit odd because in like one of the upper panels, you've got the Ninth Doctor basically putting a face to them, going, "Haha, I'm going to blow you up."
Yeah,
it's so bizarre.
I think that it's like kind of a thing of, you're going to destroy. They threaten to destroy the planet where Shogolath is on. It's like, well, if you won't give it to him, we'll just destroy the planet. So I get there's the thing of there's not enough time left, but I think it's just maybe down to this was probably written and drawn before the night was on telly, so you don't get that full kind of character. So they're kind of guessing his character in a way. So the morals are a little bit off, but yeah. And then it's revealed that that Shogolath was actually, he led a peaceful revolt that toppled the corrupt Vandutian Imperium. And he was basically a hero, while these aliens were not representative of the alien race.
They were like a little cult, weren't they?
Exactly. They were
kind of remnants of that.
A death cult, pretty much. And then Phil's like, do you know what? I could be Shogolath, the reincarnation, because there's kind of that spiritual element at the end of Unquiet Dead of, Gwyneth should have been dead the instant that she went under the arch, yet her soul lasted for a full 5 minutes talking to everyone. And it's like, well, Doctor, I think Charles Dickens tends to do this as well. Doctor, I think some things are beyond your world. And it's just kind of like, it ends on the spiritual note. It's like, you know what? Maybe Phil could be a reincarnation. Maybe that is a thing. And then he goes off and he throws the bucket over a fence, looking to quit his job and go find some new adventures. Which, I think it's a great message. I think Cruelty and this just have absolutely just fabulous messages in them.
Oh, definitely, because it's now like he now knows the future. It's not something you wait for, and he goes. It's something you go and find. I think that's quite a nice little optimistic way to end the story, really.
Yes,
but the future's in your hands.
Absolutely. Have you got any more to say about Mr. Nobody? Since this was the dark horse, as you said.
I just loved it. I think I don't know what there was about this story, but I think the characterization was right there with the Ninth Doctor. The dynamic of Nine and Rose was fantastic. I just think it was series 1 to a T. I think that's what I loved. It was just the vibes were there, as you say. It was just beautiful. That sort of more edgy Nine and the more human Rose. It just showed why that dynamic works. And Phil was a great little character. It's just a fun little romp of 9 pages and definitely worth a little read, really.
It shows how, I think it's the most effective in showing how the Doctor and Rose kind of heal people in a way and make them better. Which, of course, we did get in Art Attack, and of course the Cruelty as well. Sort of in Love Invasion, where Charlotte's kind of like, well, I'm not going to murder these husks anymore. But yeah, I think Mr. Nobody is just it's the pinnacle, I think, of just healing and making people better. And so as this book goes on, I think the synergy just gets stronger and stronger between the Doctor and Rose. It's a brilliant replication of the era. I think Mr. Nobody. It's not one to skip over, I don't think. Even though this is how you do the one shot. Comic strip right, definitely.
I mean, you compare it to Art Attack, and you're like, this is how you do it. This was just way more engaging right from the off for me, personally. So, definitely enjoyed
what would you rate it?
I'm gonna give it the same rating as I did Cruel Sea. I'll give it an
Really?
8.5. I
Wow.
just really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun reading it. It was a nice, short, simple story. And I think there was a lot of gratification once I finished reading it. It was like, yeah, that was nice.
Yeah. I think I'm probably going to go 7.5
Okay.
out of 10. I think, just maybe because it is a one shot, and I think sometimes it does maybe lack that depth that you can do with, say, multiple issues, or say if it was longer. The comic compared to like a 20-page single issue. But yeah, no, I think it's great. I think it's one of the stronger short stories in here, and yeah, I think you should absolutely read it. Next, onto the Groatsworth of Wit, which, with your Shakespeare background, how about you take the lead on this one?
Right, so like I said at the beginning, this is very much the Jubilee is to Dalek, with this sort of somewhat being an inspiration for Shakespeare, not using Shakespeare's love of language, but using Robert Greene's hatred for Shakespeare. And I guess it sort of does a Vincent and the Doctor thing of taking a historical figure to the future and seeing what history they had, but using this for a completely different alternative thing. As we start the story with these two entities, the Shades, I think. One's called Bloodfinger, a bit like
Madam Doomfinger.
Yeah, Doomfinger, Bloodtide, and Lilith. And you've got. I'm trying to think what's the other one called, because there's two.
It's like one of them's the uncle, isn't it? But I don't think their individual names are important. It's like it's the nephew and the uncle.
Yeah,
it's kind of referred to. It's Uncle Bloodfinger, and I don't actually think the uncle one's actually given a name. I can't actually remember. We'll be honest.
We'll find out as we go through.
This is our excellent research, isn't it?
Yeah, we're just doing it on the spot here. But anyway, we see them scouring good old London town, trying to find a suitable host for them to break through into our reality. So we see an execution, a sort of bar sprawl, but then they see a feast, what they can become corporeal within this, where they see Robert Greene on his deathbed, dying from the plague. And he's got such hatred and resentment for Shakespeare, that he's gone to university, and Shakespeare's just this young buck who seems to be doing very well for himself, and Robert Greene doesn't really like that.
He's got the attitude of, I'm an academic, I've worked so hard to get to this point, and then look at him, he's just like he's just glided his way through this and got popular when Robert Greene, I'm the true scholar. Really,
which is wonderful. So the demons, the Shades, make contact with Robert Greene and basically say, do you want to see what hand you have in the future? Where we see him arrive in London. I guess it's going to be 2005, I guess.
Yeah. Or maybe 2006. We don't, with the time jump and everything in Series 1.
So we see him sort of lost in London, trying to find out what part of history he played, where we see the Ninth Doctor again. A wonderful little scene within the TARDIS, where they sort of find out something's going a little bit wrong, as there's a negative force. And I like the little joke about the Ninth Doctor saying, I've just had my hair done. I think that was such a wonderful little thing, like a little callback to like the Unquiet Dead, where he says, I've changed my jumper for this occasion. And I guess this does have a bit of a moment like that when Rose gets into full Elizabethan attire, really,
because it's kind of split into two differential time zones. It's like part 1's in the future, part 2's in the past, mostly. And then Robert Greene goes into basically what's a Waterstones. It's just a bookshop, really.
Yeah, you've got an advertisement for Harry Potter. God, that's crazy.
Very much of the time, I think.
Yeah.
Just aged just about as poorly as the JK reference.
You've got the Troughton annuals as well. That's pretty cool. And the Doctor Who annuals as well.
There's the 2000. Yeah. That's such a good. Wow.
I've just noticed that. Well.
Yeah, brilliant. That.
Lovely little touch.
Is that? There's two more kind of books on the side. Is that Chris Eccleston on the bottom? Sort of the black and white cover.
I don't know. I mean, it could be, actually. I don't know.
That's so wild. That's definitely like who was this drawn by? I'm guessing it was still Mike Collins. Yeah, that's definitely Mike Collins just being like, oh, I can have a bit of a laugh here.
Yeah.
Which that's quite funny. That
I like that. So we see Robert Greene in Waterstones, seeing what impact he has made on the world. Where we get some wonderful close-ups of Robert Greene with his sort of plague-filled face. So we see him just having a little book where the little Waterstones guy takes him to the Shakespeare section with a whole illustration, and we just see him break down and sort of see the force the demons have as he smashes the Shakespeare section of Waterstones away.
Yeah. And there's kind of a bit of a commentary there of, say, maybe because this story isn't, it definitely shows the kind of more dodgy side of Shakespeare rather than the
glorifying
the more kind of romanticized version that is in Shakespeare Code, which I guess was to be more palatable to an audience. And maybe the message here is that, say, look at the amount of stuff that Shakespeare wrote compared to Greene. It's like, the bookshop guys like, well, that's all there is. It's just one. It's just one.
I mean,
novel.
This could be a little side note, but the only reason why Robert Greene's so important is because we can date the Shakespeare plays, so we've got a sort of time frame. So that's why Robert Greene's probably a little bit more prolific in that regard, because it helps us date the Shakespeare stuff.
Because he says that one of the Henrys died in 1592, so he was used as a reference for Shakespeare. And that just makes him explode. And then there's a movie coming out with which is, I think, a Shakespeare adaptation. It's the Shakespeare Shrew, which I'm guessing that's Taming of the Shrew.
Yeah, Taming of the Shrew. Yeah,
I can't imagine a standard Shakespeare adaptation having a big grand opening like that.
I mean, you did have Romeo and Juliet in the 90s with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
So I guess it's sort of riffing off that.
Yeah, definitely. It must be kind of like a modernized version. They mention it's for young people. I really enjoy 10 Things I Hate About You with Heath Ledger. That is an adaptation of Taming of the Shrew. I think that's on Disney Plus if people want to watch that. I really enjoyed that. It's one of like the classic chick flicks, I think.
Get you. Yeah, your chick flick knowledge.
Yeah, that's quite good. And then they destroy the Empire Cinema in London, which is obviously, I think, a real place. Obviously, we're not people who are familiar with down south, but they destroyed that iconic London cinema, I guess. And
it's all in Leicester Square, isn't it?
Yeah. And Robert Greene's rage brings the shades or the shadies or whatever into our reality. And what do you make of their design? Because obviously it's, I guess, one of the only monsters to not really be a big green alien.
I really like it because it plays on that classic demonic figure, doesn't it? But they're just a head and like a cloud body, aren't they? Like a gas. Yeah. And I really like the sort of like a sheep's skull design, a bit like the Carriac is in Stones of Blood. So I like how it plays with sort of the classic Hammer horror sort of stuff, really. So I love that design, and I love Eccleston within this, or the Ninth Doctor, I should say. And I think that this is proper meaty Fury of 9, and I love it.
Because they know he's a Time Lord. They're like, when they first see the Doctor, it's like, oh, I didn't think there were many of them left about, or I thought they were all gone. And it tries to be like, well, your planet's dead, Doctor. And he's like, well, if you want to make me upset, try me.
But it's a bit like the Reapers, because the Time Lords kept them at bay. They had ways of stopping them coming into it. So it's a bit like that. Now they're gone. The Shadies or Shades can come through into our world and wreak havoc.
It's that good synergy, isn't it? Where I'm guessing it was maybe they see in every single issue of this, there seems to maybe be a repeated joke or a repeated theme or a repeated notion that was in the actual episodes of Series 1. So they're kind of like, you're a lone Doctor. It's kind of reflecting, say, the Dalek in Dalek. And then obviously you've got the Father's Day reference. And so I wonder where that came from, whether that was Russell himself or Clayton Hickman as the editor being like, just to make sure that people view this as a legitimate addition to the main series, slip in these references and stuff like that. Especially where we get Rose in the next issue being the one who dresses up while the Ninth Doctor stays in his standard gear, I guess, which is, of course, similar to the Unquiet Dead.
I sort of feel like it's Russell, because I feel like Russell wanted Doctor Who to be this one thing, that he didn't want it to rely on the past. He wanted it to be one big thing. And I think that if you look at the books, how closely they tied into the TV stuff, like the Monster Inside referencing an adventure from Boomtown. So it feels very much like we're keeping this as a one big thing. If you've experienced these stories, great, then you have a wider tapestry of what this series is.
Yeah.
And what flavor we're going for if it wasn't clear on the TV stuff. So I think that it's a consistently toned set of stories, whether it be in the books or the comics, to match what is done on screen.
Yes, definitely. As we continue, we end up meeting Shakespeare because we go in the past, don't we? Whether I don't know, how familiar are you through your acting studies with Shakespeare as a person and, say, Robert Greene?
Well, when you talk of Shakespeare and the sort of the Elizabethan Tudor sort of stuff, you sort of talked about Christopher Marlowe, who was another big playwright at the time, and Shakespeare. You don't really talk about Robert Greene, really. And I think that this story plays with the sort of rumours of Shakespeare. Shakespeare's one of those characters where, is it one person? Is it multiple people? Because nobody really knows. And it's sort of
Kingmaker by Ian Fountain. Go find a man called Francis Bacon, Richard, you'll be fine. Because obviously in that, it's like Shakespeare. In that one, I guess, is shown in a kind of horrific light, really, where he's this madman who then ends up getting himself killed, and Richard III kind of swaps his place and actually becomes the Shakespeare everyone knows.
Well, this is the opening night for that, where Richard III, this story.
Yeah.
And I think as well, this story sort of plays with Shakespeare's sexuality, because obviously he had kids called, Hamlet. Whereas it sort of plays that, the Ninth Doctor would do it, but, he's definitely straight. And that's why the Ninth Doctor says, Rose, you go and deal with Shakespeare. If it was Marlowe, I would have happily took your place.
Within so the Ninth Doctor is definitely the progressive one.
Yeah, definitely within that.
So again, that's the great scene in Cataclysm, isn't it? Of him flirting with the guard.
Yeah, it does reminds me of that very much. And we see sort of Shakespeare being a bit like, "Hey, nonny, nonny." Here's Rose.
A bit creepy with her until the Shadies interrupt it, and she and you can see she's gonna slap him if he gets any closer. It's like, it's just continuing Rose's attitude and the kind of mandate. Rose needs to be the headstrong figurehead, human representation of the series.
I was just going to mention that there's a nice little nod that the Doctor's met Shakespeare before, but he can't meet him just yet, isn't there?
Yes, because I'm sure it's probably like another Doctor. It's just like, oh, I've had many adventures, many lives.
Yeah, of course, I do. I've just not met him yet. So he won't know me for ages. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Just that's the typical Doctor Who joke, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure if I am yet, or maybe I have.
Then we've got the Ninth Doctor being drawn into the play, which is quite cool, because I could feel like this would be a good story for Eccleston to perform, because I feel like Eccleston's love for Shakespeare, especially when he's talking in the recent Big Finish interview about, Macbeth and all that sort of stuff. You can see that this is the type of story Eccleston would absolutely thrive. And it's almost a shame that Eccleston never did the Shakespeare Code, because you could see that him being in the Globe Theatre filming would have been such a highlight for him in the show.
Definitely. And it's because, in this, the context is that the act for Richard III has kind of gone missing due to like all of this stuff going on. the Ninth Doctor's kind of quoting Richard III at the back, and then they're like, "You there, sir? You are our Richard." And then there he is giving his performance, and it's used in the series as well by Russell, which again, Russell was just a beautiful madman overseeing everything, and there's a great representation. It's like northern people who are working class are smart too, and they're smarter than you, even though you may be of a higher class. The Ninth Doctor, he outsmarts Van Staten and stuff like that. He stands up to the politicians, well, the politician allegories in Alien to London and World War III. And here he is quoting Richard III just from knowing it.
Yeah.
So it's all about the representation, which, I think Russell just always encouraged well, I think. And then here Rose and the Doctor really tap into I guess the good nature of Robert Greene, and Rose is the one who really tips him over the edge. And I think there's a great drawing of her eyes as she just says please, and then Robert Greene's like, okay, fine, and
be gone, you fiends.
It's not a redemption of Robert Greene, it's more him turning his rage into something else, because he's like, I'm going to use my rage to destroy the world using the power of these shades. And then he ends up destroying these tempting tricksters, I guess. And then he's returned to his bed. Shakespeare doesn't believe that it's a real thing that happened. He thinks it's all just trickery and trick shows. And then Robert Greene goes back to his bed and says that, I am better than Shakespeare. It's like, oh god.
Still filled with his envy and hatred.
Yeah, poor Robert Greene, I guess.
Yeah.
Dying of the plague. I do wonder though, because Rose touches him. It's like, does Rose have the plague now?
Well, in the novel The Plague City with the 12th Doctor, Bill and Nardole, you've got Capaldi has these sort of plague pills, so they have yeah.
Okay.
The TARDIS has got that sort of covered because Bill gets plague. Spoilers for a book that's been out 4 years, but it's all rectified because you think, oh, Bill's going to be written out of the story, but no, she's pretty written back into a story fairly quickly.
And there's a message there, but everyone's going to get forgotten about one day, Rose. Just make the most of your life while you're still around. I suppose I'll be forgotten one day. And she says, no way, nobody's ever going to forget you.
Here we are, 16 years later, talking about the Ninth Doctor.
And that's it in terms of the strips. Of course, we'll go on to the Sally Sparrow short story at the end, which is in a prose format. It's written because it was reprinted in one of the storybooks, I believe,
from the Doctor Who Annual 2006.
Yeah. And yeah, that's it. And it did seem that they knew that Chris would be leaving. That's why it's kind of like no one's ever going to forget you. And it's right, especially with him returning now.
It sort of brings a tear to my eye because I just remind myself of like the Parting of the Ways Confidential, where he had like light up over like a tribute of Series 1, and it sort of has that sort of feel to it. And I get sort of shivers from that last panel, much like I do with Sarah Jane in the 10th Doctor, when Sarah's like, don't you forget me. And obviously now Liz is no longer with us, and like, oh, nobody's going to forget you. It's just goosebump moment, really, and I love it.
It's just, I think it's such a shame that we never were able to get more out of the Ninth Doctor in terms of this expanded media, because it's a 6 books and it's this and that's it, and the annual.
You do have the Time Lord Victorious comic as well, but we're not covering that here. But now with Big Finish, it seems like Nine's getting the new lease of life. For us Ninth Doctor fans, we cherished that bit of Ninth Doctor content, what we had, and to have these graphic novel now, to have a bit of authentic 2005 Doctor Who to experience is just a delight, really.
Yeah. Then, so what would you rate The Groat's Worth of Wit?
Oh, you see, I think this has become my favourite one,
Really?
I really enjoyed it. Whether I enjoyed it more than the Shakespeare Code, because I do have a soft spot for the Shakespeare Code. I love the Shakespeare Code. I think it's one of my favourite Tennant episodes. Actually, that's bit of a hot take, I guess. But Groat's Worth of Wit, I loved it. The art style was fantastic. The use of the settings, but it felt constantly fresh. It had sort of that Hartnell quest feel to it, with the change in location, sort of the quest for Robert Greene in a way. It had sort of the empty child opening with them sort of with the Force being detected in a way. But yeah, I'm gonna give a well-deserved 9 out of 10.
Oh,
I loved it. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a nice little two-parter for me.
I wasn't looking forward to this one. I think maybe because it's weird with me. I always go kicking and screaming to historicals, I think, a lot of the time, and end up enjoying them. So I wasn't looking forward to this one. I guess kind of some stuff in it aged poorly. I think there's maybe I don't think the ideology of Robert Greene is fully formed, but I think there's also a lot in this throughout these strips where it maybe due to the format or time constraints, the stuff just maybe doesn't land. I maybe think the solution is a bit too easy, but it's definitely a moment where the Doctor is definitely powerless in that situation, and it does show off Rose being, that driving force of the story, and of course the Ninth Doctor's arc. And this was published on the 2nd of December 2005 and the 4th of January 2006. So over that time, we got the 10th Doctor. So this is the last. So this strip, and especially that last panel, really acts as kind of like, make sure that you don't forget this Doctor, I think.
Especially for us, that he was your first, so you never forget your first. So I think that it was a nice little nod to that, going, don't remember about the guy who got you into this world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we go into Tennant.
I think I would probably rank it as the same level as Love Invasion, which I did a 7 out of 10. But yeah, it doesn't. I think when you have a flick through, I think kind of maybe the colors, because they're kind of muted, because they have to be in kind of like these dark greens and browns and stuff like that, of the wooden paneling of the 16th century. It doesn't draw you in, but I think that the Shadies are a strong villain. But for me, I think Robert Shearman's script kind of toppled this in terms of strips. And that's where it kind of leads into its competitor.
I mean, I will say this for A Groat's Worth of Wit. I like how the text was used, how the demons had the shade, whatever you want to say, had a much more intricate text design, and it felt very clear with what was being said, whether it was them or the other characters.
A use of nice text there, which is the advantage of the comic medium, because then you can say, maybe imagine kind of like, how would they talk, kind of a whispery voice, and that's why it's all their speech bubbles are wavy, and
or a bit Gelf-like with that childlike thing. Maybe that'd be quite cool.
Definitely. So this is the most obvious of the Ninth Doctor's arc, and there's a great line where he says, that I'm as tough as old leather boots, which I think that's a great line for the Ninth Doctor.
Yeah, like Father's Day, but old things, they can't get free because it's an old building. So I think
for me, I don't know, I just don't think it cements its ideology fully. And I think in terms of these strips, I would have really loved to have seen Rose have a lot more agency, because I think Robert Shearman's the one who really excels in that. She is the only one who breaks through the native water race on Mars. She's the one who breaks through that kind of psyche and returns to her own body. It shows the kind of when the human soul has got enough drive and will, it can do impossible things that sometimes not even a Time Lord can have as well. But yeah, an enjoyable end to the strips. The strips, I think, if you're wanting meat, I don't think you're gonna get it. But I think if you want a really quick fix after Ravages, which is the whole reason we're doing this, it's like, we finish Ravages and like, okay, how about we explore some Ninth Doctor that we've not read before? And here we have it. if you're going to buy this, I think if you don't have the annual, definitely get this for the Sally Sparrow story, which we'll get onto shortly. And I think for me, Cruel Sea is my recommendation in this as well. Yeah.
I would agree. I think that it does the job what it set out. It's a Ninth Doctor comic in a more fun, zany setting, especially in the Love Invasion, where you do get the use of cheesy Grin Eccleston to the more surrealist comic of Cruel Sea to the zany, fun, historical. Yeah.
So the whole thing is about My Christmas Holidays by Sally Sparrow. It's an essay written by her, and the whole short story grammatically is written like a 12-year-old, but it's not spelled like if it's a 12-year-old, because I think.
But it said that she's very advanced for her age, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's kind of the explanation. And it's more just for the reader's own enjoyment of reading this. And it's the way that she says, I'm 12 years old. I've all but on hair, braces you can hardly see, a dent in my left knee where I fell off a bicycle when I was 10, and parents. It's like, it doesn't grammatically make sense, but it's obviously, it's this 12-year-old just going, and this and this and this and this and this and this. It's that hyperactive energy. And she's staying in her aunt's cottage because her mum and dad have gone away for the weekend. And she's very honest about her aunt, I guess, like any 12-year-old. And she peels back the wallpaper in her room, and it says, "Help me, Sally Sparrow," which is, of course, Moffat uses, along with Sally's name, of course, as the hook into Blink, and that's the pre-title sequence, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
So what was your thoughts going into this? Because I was saying that, I wasn't looking forward to this going in, because I thought, is this going to be half of a story? Because it's not got the Weeping Angels, it's not got some of the side characters and it's not got that Blink has, and it's obviously not got the kind of emotional hook that Blink has as well. So what was your thoughts going into it?
I was sort of dreading this one, to be honest.
Yeah.
It sort of felt like a bit of a chore, in the sense that it's not really a comic strip, so you're like, why is it here? In that sense, it felt very out of place when you skim through, the graphic novel, and you're like, this isn't really a comic, it belongs in like a storybook. It shouldn't be here, but obviously this is a collection of Ninth Doctor stories. But I think as you read it, I feel like this version has way more of a heart than the actual TV Blink. It's not
really
set out. Yeah, I feel like this has more of a heartwarming feel. I feel more uplifted when reading this and watching Blink. I feel that there's just a real sense of joy within this, this little story.
Blink ends on a very bittersweet note, doesn't it? It's like Sally's maybe found love. However, she has lost her best friend, and that kind of thing. But while here, it's like there is an innocent adventure where you, the fan, are the one who saves the Doctor, because he's stuck in 1985, and Sally asks her aunt, what happened Christmas Eve 1985, and she's like, I don't know, it was 20 years ago. And she said, maybe check the photos tomorrow. And as Sally goes to bed, she pretends to be asleep, like I guess like we all did when we were a kid.
Yeah. Well, she even references that, doesn't she? Like, I'm never really asleep.
And her aunt leaves the photos there for when Sally wakes up. Obviously, Sally is smart, and she wakes up and then looks through all the photos in the middle of the night to find the Ninth Doctor with
help me,
Sally Sparrow. Yeah, which is very different, isn't it, compared to the actual episode of Blink, isn't it? Because I guess it's still the cookie crumbs of the DVD extras, isn't it? It's the Ninth Doctor, and then Sally's the one who kind of works it out for herself, that they're all meant for me, while the Doctor here is kind of the one who kind of helps her and guides her along the way.
We still do have sort of the Easter egg feel to it, because he's going off like from a VHS tape. What was left on the shelf, and he's using the diary she wrote about her holiday, the essay, as a way of answering Sally's questions, which I thought was a really nice little way. Instead of doing the Easter eggs, I thought that was a really lovely touch that the Doctor got hold of your homework, and he's here to talk to you through that, which I love.
Yeah, it's the bootstrap paradox. It's like, you know, the end causes the beginning, and it's like, but without the beginning, the end can't happen. It's like, oh, it's a big cycle. It's a big cycle, and it kind of implies as the hook that the Ninth Doctor's kind of using a bit of magic mind reading as the wallpaper in a room, as she pulls more strips off, says like, think of a number and go into the furthest tree in the back garden, and there will be the number that you're thinking of. And she's like, right, I'm going to think of the most impossible number ever. Add my age.
Over explains it as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I love that.
I'm going to do this, that, this, and it'll come to 73. Because whenever people say think of a number, they always choose like 10 or 7. But no, I'm going to choose a big stupid number. And it's going to be 73.
Kids know everything, so you're like, I'm going to be really smart and clever. So I feel like that definitely has that feel to it.
And the Doctor goes, okay, go to the end of the tree through the message on the right. And then she goes, it is 73 written on the tree. And then we see that she's got, I really think that this is the advantage of a short story as well, because the Doctor reacts to everything Sally says, while here there's a little bit of a more, oh, what the hell, because Sally's thinking this stuff, isn't she? She's like, I thought this, and the Doctor's reacting to it. Which I just think that's so clever. Because she's like, she says, I frowned. Not a lot of point in asking questions when the man you're asking can't hear them! ! And that's just her in her head. And she goes, he goes, who says I can't hear you? So it allows the story to just be a little bit more complicated. And it's revealed that a spy gave a spy who was helping the Doctor have a sword fight with some Santarans in Istanbul, gave her this homework and was like, okay, you'll need it one day. And of course, that's the kind of kid notion of, oh, you know, you want to be a spy. Like, what kid doesn't want to be a spy and stuff like that? So again, this is a story that's very fit for the annuals, isn't it? It shows what Doctor Who. It shows what the revival of Doctor Who was for, and that's kids. And I think that's such a important thing to have when, you know, when you're exploring Series 1 and its expanded media. You know, Doctor Who's focus should always be on kids, and this is kind of the epitome of it, isn't it?
Well, you think of how lucky our generation of fans were that we had the annuals and we had like the storybooks as well.
Yeah,
which were very a mix again, very much like a story in the same vein as this. I think there's one very similar to this in the 2006 one with 10th Doctor and Rose. There's something very similar within that, which I can't remember, but I need to revisit that one.
So I think there's a great joke here, and it's like, you know, my hands start feeling shaky, like when you're doing your homework on the bus, and then it's about a page later that it says, oh, by the way, don't do your homework on the bus. And it's like, oh, he's mind reading. But Sally appears. The Doctor's like, you've got to pilot my ship back. And then
he burped and he'd been left, the TARDIS had been left.
Yeah.
Which I love. I love that sort of kiddiness to it.
He was like, I could wait 20 years, but I don't want the ship to fall into the wrong hands. So that's the Series 1 thing. The box is the most important, the greatest, most magical thing in the universe. You know, you can't let it fall into the wrong hands. It's a lot like in Part of the Ways, isn't it? He sends the TARDIS back because he can't let the Daleks or of any force like that. That's why he sets up the protocol, take control of it because it's too powerful. And then the TARDIS you see on the videotape while Sally's watching lands, and then out she comes. And she's like, oh, hello, me from 2 hours ago. And so it again, this is where it gets a lot more complicated than maybe Blink is, where it's a little bit more straightforward, where Sally Sparrow writes the transcript as it's going along, and then we'll give it to the Doctor eventually in one day. While here you've got the extra element of Sally appearing on the videotape, which was good. I don't really understand why she had to do her essay before she got in the TARDIS. I'm guessing she does it because future her told her to do it, I guess. So the memories are all fresh and like what she's thinking and that.
Or is it Moffat going, kids, do your homework and then you can do the fun stuff after? Maybe, I don't know.
It could be that because because you kind of think, oh, but I thought the spy gives it to her because it sounds like she's going to do the homework then give it to the Doctor. But wait, that wouldn't make sense because he got it in the past. So yeah, it most likely is one of those messages. Just do your homework, and then you can play with your TARDIS playset and Rose action figure.
Prioritize important things.
And she's like, just press the button on one side of the console, and the TARDIS will fly itself. And then it ends with, so here I am finishing my essay. The key of the TARDIS is in the door, and that she's going to go on this huge big adventure. I'm going to do my homework, and the big blue box is waiting for me at the end of the garden, and I finish my homework. And obviously, you've got the complete story, haven't you? Because then you imagine her going to the TARDIS, which you see there, which I think is a great image. It's like, what kid doesn't want to be in the TARDIS? That was us in the Doctor experience.
See, that's the thing. What I love, because I think as kids we all imagined, what if the TARDIS landed in our back garden? And I think that was such a lovely way to end it. And I love how the story goes full circle because you think, why am I reading this kid's essay? You know, because it's very over detailed, and then you're like, oh, that's why we're practically reading like this kid's life and why there's these little jokes about this song, what she wasn't too keen on. What parents don't know. It's just wonderful little stuff, really.
Even though we've explained it, it's totally worth reading because there's so many little good jokes in there. Moffat's like one of Doctor Who's best conceptual writers. He just comes up with like the most bold stuff. A Blink is one of my favorite episodes, so you know it's magic to see the kind of groundwork for it, and that's kind of an advertising feature. I'm guessing it's here just to bulk up the pages because they've not got much to work with. It would only be that thick, so it just adds a bit more bang to your book. And I guess for just to advertise Blink, just go on the to advertise itself on the back of Blink, if that makes sense, because Blink is, a lot of people say it's an entry point into Doctor Who, and it's definitely iconic in that respect. So people will buy it if there's something Blink related, which is still going strong now, I guess, with the 10th Doctor and Jodie stuff. There's a sequel to Blink and all that. I hope I've explained this right. It's such a weird and confusing way, but I guess hopefully if everyone's watched Blink, you kind of understand where we were going with it. It's the cycle round. It's different enough than Blink to differentiate itself. There's the whole thing of canon, and it's like, don't overthink it. It's just what writers do, and because if you've got a good idea, don't let it go to waste. You know.
Yeah, you might as well just use it multiple times.
Yeah.
Which Moffat did quite a few bits in his era. He definitely recycled a few of his ideas as he went on. Which is no means about it. I mean, even the little girl writing the essay. Yeah, I was thinking like the little Amy Pond at the start of 11th Hour where she's writing her little list to Father Christmas. You know, I thought that it's a nice little callback to, well, not callback, but a nice little nod to what Moffat would later do with the show.
Yeah. That is on what I did on my Christmas holidays by Sally Sparrow. A very different Sally Sparrow, but I really like this. I'm going to put this on the same level as Cruel Sea with an 8.5. I think I really enjoy this. This is like, if you've not got the annual, I think buy Cruel Sea for this. I think it's like those are the two main events. I think
for me, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I think I prefer it to Blink. Actually, I think. It was just nice to have like Daddy Eccleston, Daddy Ninth Doctor, that more heartwarming sort of grandfather figure of the Doctor within this. It sort of reminds me of like Clayton Hickman, where he described the Ninth Doctor in The Confidential, that he's wacky like Tom Baker, but the youthful innocence of, you know, Peter Davison. And I feel like this story shows the Hartnell in Eccleston's Doctor within it.
Yeah.
And you can just imagine the joy of Eccleston within it.
Because the Doctor Dad, Ninth Doctor, we only get to see in
Empty Child,
Stephen
really,
Moffat's two-parter.
Yeah.
Which I think that's cool. I really like Moffat's viewpoint on who the Ninth Doctor is. We see that a lot in by different writers, and especially in this set of like, who is the Ninth Doctor? And I think Moffat just has one of just the best views, especially if just I don't know. He grounds the Doctor in such a relatable way, yet just has him be that touchstone of impossibility away from reality that you can't quite comprehend. He's like he's your dad, but better.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's that sort of father figure for you, really.
Yeah. So, in terms of the whole Cruel Sea graphic novel, I don't think as an entire thing it's like one of the strongest in terms of storytelling. I think you can be hit and miss with a few of the stories. Maybe you might forget a few parts, because even though I enjoyed Love Invasion, I did kind of forget about it as the days kind of went by. But if you want a taste of 2005, I think definitely explore Cruel Sea. I don't know if it's going out of print or not. It's a little bit conflating for which of the Panini stuff is going out of print, because the first column one's out of print.
Yeah, Voyager.
Which is quite a little bit difficult to find now. So I guess if you want to get on it, the Ninth Doctor after Ravagers, there's a little bit of a taster until 2. Then get this.
I think it's a nice little appetite and a nice little palate cleanser while you wait for volume 2 of the Big Finish Eccleston stuff. I think that it's a nice little appetite into the main event of a Big Finish box set, really. I think that it's Eccleston with Rose. Hopefully it doesn't make you miss 9 and Rose when you get the Big Finish box set, because I think that's one of the joys about this comic, and I think that if you're a fan of 9 and Rose's dynamic, you're definitely going to get that within these comic stories, because I think that it's very authentic and very true to their characters.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's always a joy just to have more, again, as you said, more Rose and Ninth Doctor interaction. They were the Doctor and companions who were just made for each other. And it's like, even though I love Rose and the 10th Doctor, it's like she just has that chemistry bang on with Christopher Eccleston, just both in their characters and on and off screen. Yeah, I'm sure Eccleston maybe acted as a mentor to her throughout the series, and the behind the scenes, the hellish behind the scenes that went on during series 1. But I don't know. It's a great relationship that these two have. I'm happy that all of the strips are just those two, because that's it. That they are the essentials of series 1. And yeah, I think it works incredibly well. It just is sad how little we have of it. It's very thin compared to other Panini graphic novels. I've just got it next to
the normal ones are about like 200 pages, really.
Yeah,
188 pages, roughly around there.
Well, I think this is maybe about the 150 page mark, isn't it?
Well, including like the behind the scenes stuff, yeah.
It's 130 pages. It says 129 on the second to last page. So yeah, 130 pages. But yeah, value for Ninth Doctor.
I think if you want to get into the comics, I think that it's a good jumping on point, because I think that it's nice, simple, not to say simple stories, but it's easy to follow. You're not going to get lost. You know where you're at. It's a short graphic novel, so it's not like you're having this massive Bible of comics and you're like, how am I going to get through this? It's not daunting. You can get through it within a couple of days and you'll feel gratified from it, really. So I think that it's a nice little teaser into the Doctor Who graphic novel world.
Yes, definitely. It's the supplementary material to the big giant series that we were introduced in 2005, and then I guess the whole deal was you can reenact all these ideas with your Doctor Who action figures that you could get from character options for £6. God, we had it good back in the day, didn't we?
God, we did. We didn't have to go to B&M hunting for exclusives.
Just you could walk into anywhere, like with a Woolworths, Tesco. They were everywhere. Oh, great days.
Glorious
great days.
Times.
But yeah, no, that's the Cruel Sea, of course.
That's done.
And of course, be sure to check out the Mermaid's donation link and what they do in helping young trans people and families of trans people as well, and just aiding with support. And yeah, It's a great charity. It's one that Elliot Chapman has supported of Big Finish as well. You should definitely go have a look and donate.
Yeah, the link is in the description. So if you want to know more information, then please do check the link out.
Yeah, but yeah, I'll leave you to wrap up, Ben.
Yeah, that's Book Corner done. Hope that you've enjoyed our little foray into the Cruel Sea. Hopefully, we'll be back in a couple of weeks' time for another foray into the graphic novel world of Doctor Who, good old Doctor Who. Whatever that one will be, we haven't decided. We've got multiple ideas, but we'll figure it out as we go along. So hopefully you've enjoyed this, and do check it out. It's a worthy read. Not one of the I wouldn't say it's one of the essential Doctor Who magazine comics. It's definitely not going to be in like your top 10 of like The Flood or World Shapers in that regard, but it's a nice little bit of history, isn't it? It's a nice bit of history with that forgotten Rob Shearman story. So if you're a fan of Rob Shearman and you've enjoyed his Big Finish stuff and his other work, and you want to see how he tackles the Ninth Doctor in comic form, then it's fair for you to explore. So thank you very much, James, for joining me, being the comic scholar.
God damn it. But no, it's been fun. It's been fun. I love talking about the Ninth Doctor and Rose. So yeah, good fun.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have more fun in the next episode as well with whatever Doctor we do next. So I think that concludes us for this Friday night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and your evening, and we'll see you very soon for either a Big Finish fans or another installment of Book Corner. So thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.